Thank you for attending our National Grid webinar, Understanding Commodity Rate Changes. My name is Heather Keller, and I will be the host of today's webinar. We will be sending everyone a follow-up email within the next couple of days that will include a PDF of the PowerPoint presentation materials and the playback link to today's webinar. Because of the large number of attendees, we will only be accepting written questions from you today. Please submit any questions by typing them in the chat or Q&A windows on your screen. We will take some time at the end of our presentation to answer your questions, or we will follow up with you separately after the webinar has concluded. To a presentation to full screen, click on the diagonal arrow icons in the upper right corner. Please be aware that you are not the only participant today. The names of our other attendees are not shown to you for privacy. Towards the end of the webinar, we will be conducting a survey. A polling window will appear on the bottom right of your screen, and you will be asked to answer 5 multiple-choice questions. If you would please take a few moments to complete the survey, we would appreciate your feedback. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Marcy Reed, who is the president of National Grid Massachusetts, to get the webinar started and introduce the next presenter.
Mother, and welcome to everyone who's dialed in. We're really happy with the attendance that we have, and we're excited to be with you for the next hour. So what we thought we would try to accomplish today is to provide some information to create some clarity around what's going on with energy costs, both gas and electricity, in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And with me here to make the presentation today are 4 others. We have Tim Horan, who's the president of National Grid Business in Rhode Island. We've got White, who's our vice president of customer strategy in the environmental group. Angio is here as director of gas supply planning. And around the team, we've got Margaret Jansen, who's the director of wholesale electric supply. So first, just a brief commercial on National Grid. We are one of the world's largest utilities, both gas and electric, with 24,000 employees, 18 million customers. About 7 million of those customers are here in the U.S. Massachusetts, which is the business I'm responsible for, we serve customers from the New York border all the way through the Cape and down through Nantucket. We've in 72 towns we cover electrically, represent about 1.3 million customers, and we serve 116 towns and cities for gas with almost 900,000 customers. The towns serve both electric and gas, so you can't simply add the numbers. We serve about 220 towns altogether. I have 5,000 employees, which makes us one of the state's largest employers. And I think we are regulated by the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities. So the reason we're here today is to talk about commodity rates. And start by saying your bill is made up of 2 pieces. Margaret is going to go into this in more depth, but basically you have the National Grid portion, which is distribution charge. There are costs that we control and that we watch very closely. Then there's the supply portion, or the commodity portion, which represents the amount of electricity or gas that you use. That's the part that we're going to have a lot of conversation around today. In Massachusetts, we're obligated to go out to bid for commodity for November 1st. We also do that on May 1st. But for the first pricing, our gas customers are going to see a flat to slight decline in our gas commodity rates. And for customers, we are unfortunately going to see a significant increase of 37%. It has everything to do with the electric generation, and Margaret is going to get into that. Quickly, what we do here is we buy electricity and natural gas on behalf of all of our customers. Pass that cost through on our bill. We mark up or mark down, just as a pass through. So therefore, lose or make money on this portion of the bill. And Margaret will again talk about that later. All these rates have been approved by the DPU and will be effective on November 1st, which is Saturday. So that's a high-level overview of Massachusetts. Tim Horan, our president of Rhode Island, will give us a similar overview for Rhode Island. Tim?
Betsy, appreciate that, and good morning, everyone. And thanks for being on the call today. You can see in Rhode Island, we've got just under 900 employees serving 500,000 electric customers and 257,000 gas customers. I think that's one of the largest employers within the state. And a couple interesting notes that Net Gas, we're the sole provider of natural gas within Rhode Island, and roughly about 98% of the electric customers we have the privilege to serve on a day-to-day basis. Fairly good-sized distribution system on both the gas and electric side, and you can see that on the chart. And as most of you know, hopefully we're regulated by the Public Utilities Commission, of which we're commissioners at the present time. So on the bill side of the house, on the electric and gas side, similar to the breakdown with the distribution part of the bill and the commodity part of the bill that Marcy talked about, that's the same process we have in Rhode Island. When you look at our electric rates, we will be filing with the Commission in mid-November. Rates for the next 6 months starting January 1st. With the power generation costs that we see in our region, we will see an increase in the cost on the electric side, and we will know that in the mid-November timeframe. On the rates, we have just filed and approved a reduction of roughly 8.3% for our average customer, and those will go into effect the 1st of November. It's really a result from a credit from the last year's costs and also a reduced gas supply cost. And as you see, we put the rates on electric twice a year, gas once a year. So distinction there. One of the things that we spend quite a bit of time on with our customers to help manage their energy use is through many energy efficiency programs that we have. Ed White will go into those in more detail later on. So with that, I'd like to introduce Liz Aranjo, who will talk the gas supply. Liz?
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity today to provide you with some information on our gas supply portfolio and how we serve our customers each and every day. As way of background, as both Marcy and Tim have noted, we are a gas distribution company in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and in addition, we operate distribution systems in both upstate and downstate New York. In all of our territories, we purchase resources on behalf of only our firm residential and commercial and industrial customers. As Marcy also noted, the cost of these purchases are passed on directly to customers with no profit or markup for National Grid. So just as way of background, I want to speak to you about how gas does get to National Grid. It is delivered to National Grid on interstate pipelines, and all of these interstate pipelines are regulated by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, also known as FERC. It is a complex grid which moves natural gas from its source to the ultimate point of delivery. There's a high concentration of pipelines in Texas and Louisiana, in the Louisiana area, as you can see on the map. This traditionally was the bulk of the supply came from this location in and around the Gulf of Mexico. Firstly, as you see near the market area where we're located in the Northeast, there are only a limited number of pipelines feeding this area. And in fact, there are only 2 pipelines that directly serve our distribution systems in New England, and those are the Algonquin Gas Transmission Pipeline and Tennessee Gas Pipeline. So as a gas company, we're responsible for making certain that we have enough gas to serve our customers 365 days a year. And we must do this in a least cost and reliable manner. So when we do so, we must maintain a gas supply portfolio of resources that is flexible enough to deal with varying weather. Warm weather, snow weather, as well as very cold weather. And by very cold weather, I mean a day with an average temperature of -3 degrees Fahrenheit. So the resources that make up the portfolio include firm pipeline transportation capacity, and this is used to transport gas to our distribution systems. And by purchasing firm capacity, essentially we're paying for the right to reserve space in the pipeline, which we can use 365 days a year. And we also contract for underground storage access, with underground fields used to store gas, purchased only in the summertime when prices are typically less expensive, for use in the wintertime when the weather begins to get colder. And these storage facilities are located on the interstate pipeline grid. Lastly, we contract for peaking assets, which include LNG and delivered supplies. LNG, or liquefied natural gas, is similar to underground storage in that these supplies are purchased during the winter period and stored for use throughout the winter. Purchased during the summer and stored for use throughout the winter. And we also purchase Citygate delivered supplies, which are supplies delivered directly to our distribution systems by a third party. and typically the most expensive supplies in our portfolio. Assets are the supplies that we call on the coldest days of winter to meet customer demand. And costs vary for each of the supplies in the portfolio, depending on a number of factors: the location of the supply source, the cost to transport the supply on the pipeline system, any time of year the supply is needed. So in order to mitigate any price volatility in the marketplace, National Grid also has hedging programs in place. And although the programs vary slightly by state, they're all designed with the goal of minimizing price volatility. Here you can see the makeup of resource type that we use to forecast and that we expect to use on the coldest of days. We refer to this day as a peak day, and also the coldest season that we must plan for, which is also referred to as the peak season. And that's a November through March period. These extreme cold scenarios are expected only to occur approximately once in 40 years, but nonetheless, we must be prepared and plan for this type of extreme weather. Things in context, although last winter was a very cold winter, it still wasn't as cold as what we actually planned for. This day, we forecast customer demand of 1.6 billion cubic feet. For the coldest season, we forecast customer demand totaling 120.4 cubic feet. As shown on the top pie chart, on the peak day, we forecast our supply mix to be comprised of approximately 40% of flowing supplies sourced from Gulf, Canada, and the market area, 4% from Citygate delivered peaking supplies, and 56% to be made up of a combination of underground storage and LNG. And both underground storage LNGs are supplies that, as I mentioned previously, are purchased and stored in the summer for use during the winter period. So to store gas is something that cannot be replicated on the electric side. Electricity cannot be stored, it must be generated when it's needed. So the chart on the bottom shows our forecasted mix of supplies for a peak season. The supply sources are generally the same as on the design day, but with varied percentages when you look across the entire November to March season. And turn to the pricing of these supplies. As way background, I've provided here some basic pricing terms we use. Get traded on the NYMEX along with other commodities. And the majority of the gas that we purchase on behalf of our gas customers is based off of the NYMEX price, with the physical location of this NYMEX price being the Henry Hub in Louisiana. Now, gas is not purchased at that exact point. This is where the term basis comes into play. The basis is the pricing differential between the point of purchase and Henry Hub. So, if the NYMEX is $4 and we purchase gas in South Texas, which has a basis of -$1, then the cost of that gas is $3, $4 minus the $1. Now, a Citygate delivered index price also works the same way. It reflects the total cost of gas, NYMEX plus or minus the basis. Now, here in New England, during the cold winter season, the Citygate index price reflects the supply-demand imbalance of a constrained market, where gas companies ourselves rely on a very small volume of Citygate delivered supplies to serve our customers on peak days and during peak season. Fire generators rely greatly on these supplies. So when the demand is high and the pipelines are fully utilized, the cost of these supplies soars. And here we have this table that shows the actual first of month prices for the wholesale cost of gas for city delivered supplies in the New England area on both Algonquin and Tennessee, as well as what we have for the forecasted price for this winter, which is the bottom line in each of those. Just looking at the 5-month average since 2010-2011, you can see the extreme volatility of these prices. The effective prices for this winter, as of October 27, show a 5-month average of $3.40 on Algonquin and $13.09 on Tennessee. And prices reflect the market's expectation of pricing, taking into consideration the pipeline capacity constraints that do exist in New England. So as we get into the winter, the prices will certainly change, largely driven by actual weather, which in turn affects demand. The last line we have on the table shows the forecasted NYMEX price for the same time period, showing a 5-month average $3.72 a decatherm. And NYMEX prices, along with the cost of gas and storage, both underground and LNG, are what make up the forecasted commodity cost of gas for our residential and commercial and industrial customers. So back at last winter, suffice to say it was quite extreme. The record-breaking cold well from last winter led to extreme high demand for natural gas, driving up commodity prices. But to these obstacles, National Grid was able to provide uninterrupted service to all of our firm customers and also significantly mitigate, natural gas costs, the result of our diverse supply portfolio as well as our hedging strategies. So in summary, as we head into this winter, National Grid is fully prepared to meet our gas supply obligations. We're analyzing the last of our supply contracts needed for this winter, and that will be completed by November 1st. And underground storage inventories will be full for December 1st as well as the LNG inventories that we have. We'll be filling those this month of November to be full as well for November 1st. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Margaret Jansen. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz. Understanding how our gas supply is procured and delivered into our region is a great background for the explanation of what is happening to electric prices in our Northeast region, especially during the winter. I'd now review how our electricity is procured in the wholesale market, how commodity rates are set, as well as an overview of the wholesale market participants, what drives electric prices, and touch on a few current regional issues impacting the markets. With that agenda, let's start with a brief overview of National Grid's electric business overlaid on the map of its gas business. Here you see National Grid buys power on behalf of our electric commodity customers in Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and New York. In 2013, we purchased 31,000 gigawatt hours of electricity here in the U.S., which translates to a cost of over $1 billion in New England alone for our commodity customers in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. I'll first start describing Massachusetts, and then I'll move over to Rhode Island. Here you can see a graphical representation of the total bill of a typical Massachusetts residential customer who's taking electricity commodity called basic service from the utility. Up to the left side of the bill, this upcoming winter, you can see that the cost for the electric commodity and renewables is approximately 2/3 of the total monthly bill for a Massachusetts customer. These are based on the new winter rates in Massachusetts on November 1st for the next 6 months. Just like the natural gas commodity that Liz described, these electric commodity costs are actual costs incurred by National Grid and are not marked up, passed through directly to commodity customers. Focus now on just the commodity rates called basic service rates. This shows the new approved rates going into effect on November 1st, as well as the current rates and the rates that were in effect last November. Across each customer group, winter rates are higher than summer rates, and these winter rates are significantly higher than last winter's. I'd like to explain how the rates are based on the underlying procurement. The procurement of basic service is very prescriptive, with Massachusetts state regulations laying out the details of how and when it is procured. It is the same procurement process across Massachusetts and the other utilities. Basics must be competitively procured. So our utility conducts competitive solicitations for each portion of the commodity load to be served by wholesale suppliers offering requirement service or load following contracts. This is hedged at a fixed monthly price for all the electricity needs of a specific customer group in a specific zone. It is 100% hedged with no exposure to market variations during the rate period for the company or its customers. Internal supply contracts reflect market prices more closely since they're procured more frequently for shorter periods of time. In this way, this customer group sees strong market signals through their monthly basic service rates. Residential and commercial customer groups were more smoothed out and are flat for 6 months at a time, which has much less price volatility than the industrial customers. The contracts for residential and commercial groups are procured competitively twice a year for 50% of the supply, so that there are 2 price points per year that average to calculate the basic rate for the next period. For example, the residential basic service rate taking effect on November 1st is based on the contracts that were procured in March and September earlier this year. This example, November's residential basic service rate of 10 cents was based on contracts that were procured in March and September of 2013, locked in well before the record-setting weather and polar vortex that hit us in Jan and February of 2014. During these months, service customers were insulated from the extreme market volatility that was occurring because we had our hedged contracts already in place. By March 2014, prices were already increasing for the next winter and were reflected in the contracts procured for the upcoming winter we are now beginning to enter. These contracts are competitively bid, and National Grid does not make a profit on the commodity costs. After we complete the prescribed procurement of contracts, we calculate the new basic service rates and receive approval from the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities on the rates which are going to affect for the next period. Turning to Rhode Island, here's a little representation of a total bill for a typical residential customer taking commodity called standard offer service from the utility. Here are current through the end of December, and you can see on the left side of the bill that less than half of the total is due to commodity costs. But we are anticipating an increase in standard offer rates for this period starting in January. Focusing on the commodity rates called standard offer rates, here's a table with the current rates compared to the previous period, as well as the same period last year. As with Massachusetts, the rates for the winter period containing the peak months of January and February are higher than the summer months. Now review how rates are based on procurement in Rhode Island. Electric procurement is very similar to that of Massachusetts in that we competitively procure full requirement service contracts. For the adult customer group, we procure every 3 months, offering that changes every month, sending a strong market signal to this group. In contrast, for the residential and commercial customer groups, we procure more fuel supply through dollar cost averaging approach, adding load following contracts over time, with five price points for the residential group and 3 for commercial. These contracts, in addition to an estimate of a small component of spot purchases, are the basis for setting the 6-month fixed rate for standard offer service. The company does not make any profit on these purchases or contracts. The offer service rates reflect the market costs incurred by the company on behalf of its commodity customers. We rates with the Rhode Island Public Utilities Commission for approval and plan to file upcoming winter rates in mid-November after we finish our procurements. Note, the PUC requires us to file a procurement plan for standard offer service annually. So we review and update recommendations for the PUC's consideration and approval. Once approved, we must adhere to the procurement plan in order to comply with the PUC order. This is also a very prescriptive process, allowing for transparency of our competitive procurement and rate-setting process. Let's dive into some more technical details of what makes up electric commodity. There are 3 main components: capacity, and ancillaries. As you can see from this pie chart, the energy component is the largest share of the cost. It reflects the variable component of electric costs and is usually what is being referred to in discussions on electric price volatility. Unlike natural gas, electricity cannot be stored on a large scale, so this component of energy represents what needs to be generated in real time as it is needed. So forecasting this component of energy is driven largely by forecasted fuel prices being used by generators, like natural gas and oil, as well as weather factors. The second component of capacity is a distant second in terms of cost, but it is important in that its cost is driven by the estimated system peak demands as well as the amount of generation that is available to run. To the question of how energy and capacity prices set and by whom. To the market players in the wholesale electricity markets, it can be described as balance, with one side supply and the other side demand. Supply to generators willing to bid their output into the market. On the other side is demand, which is the load, represented by utilities on behalf of their commodity customers, as well as competitive suppliers for their contracted customers. The center of this balance is the independent system operator, which is called ISO New England for our region, which is continuously balancing supply and demand at the market price. While the ISO New England does have a role in ensuring competitive prices in the wholesale markets, their main objective is reliability. The ISO New England coordinates operation of the transmission system and is the centralized planning organization responsible for analyzing and planning for the long-term future needs of our region. New England has many participating stakeholders, including local distribution utilities, transmission owners, generators, and many others. This shows how our New England region is split electrically into the load zones per the ISO. Here's a snapshot of the ISO New England's webpage showing the real-time or spot price as it changes in 5-minute intervals as the ISO continuously balances the supply and demand for energy. So we've covered how the wholesale markets work. What is the driver behind power prices? Well, it is natural gas prices. This here shows the strong correlation between natural gas and power prices. You can see the harsh winter experienced in Jan and Feb earlier this year drove thermostats and natural gas heating usage, and prices rose, which is in the red line on this graph. So did the demand of gas-fired generators, which caused scarcity pricing for natural gas. This translated into the unforeseen spikes in power prices shown as blue on this graph. And you see that through the summer months, when electric load usually peaks, the correlation between cheap natural gas prices and electric prices continues. So what does this mean for our future? Well, the forecast of how high ISO New England power prices will be for the upcoming winter can be seen in forward contracts called futures, which are traded on NYMEX, and they're an indication of what the market expects based on all known information. Unfortunately, the forecasted prices for this winter's peak months of January and February are up at levels that were experienced this past winter. This leads us to conclude that the market's outlook for the winter is taking into consideration the system constraints that still exist and possibly could cause price spikes during cold weather events. This is why basic service and standard offer rates have risen so dramatically for the winter. There are also some other evolving issues in the New England area, including shifting of the generation mix, retirement of large nuclear and coal power plants. The Northeast generation is not recent, but it has reached a critical point. As the generation fleet becomes cleaner, with natural gas replacing older coal and oil units, its stability as well as reliability is called into question during cool periods where gas-fired generation is competing with heating load for supply. The ISO New England has a challenge in managing the balance of supply and demand during these peak periods, as the reliability of the system must be maintained. Several efforts underway to manage this from either a short or a long-term perspective. The ISO New England has identified a central issue contributing to the increase in electricity costs: gas pipeline constraints. In analysis, the ISO New England has pointed out the risks to grid ability and higher electricity prices resulting from the increasing constraints on the gas pipeline system, in addition to the lack of secure fuel arrangements by generators. Interdependencies that are only increasing between gas and electric. Natural gas is cheaper and cleaner than fuel oil, so heat conversions continue, supporting gas growth and tapping the abundant supply of shale gas nearby. A major source of the regional gas growth is the gas-fired generation that is replacing less efficient oil and coal power plants, as well as the aging nuclear units. It's important to note that these gas-fired generators are also key to system reliability, as ISO New England calls upon them to quick ramp up in order to balance varying demand. They're called upon to balance renewable generators, which are increasingly coming onto the grid with their contribution of diversifying supply, along with their need for balancing due to the uneven output or intermittency. Again, back to the main objective of reliability. We see that coordination is being enhanced between gas and electric markets, and it may be possible to incentivize additional dual fuel capability for electric generators. However, there's not enough for our future energy system. The reality is that increased energy infrastructure, including regional pipeline capacity, will be needed. The growing interdependency between gas and electricity will require long-term investment. We need new natural gas pipelines to the region to deliver the plentiful natural gas and relieve the constraints for this growing market. We also need to continue to diversify generation, and we would be better to integrate clean generation resources by strengthening the electric transmission network in our region. We feel the benefits of improving operational flexibility, reducing congestion between the zones, and ultimately reducing customer costs. So we're frankly concerned and continue to be concerned about market prices impacting basic service and standard offer for this winter and future years. Fundamental infrastructure issues still exist. We saw firsthand last winter how limited pipeline capacity, complicated by weather, caused spikes in wholesale natural gas prices, driving up wholesale power prices. To put estimate costs into perspective, market costs in England were $5 billion during this past winter season, compared to $5.2 billion for all of 2012. We continue to monitor the market as we prepare our commodity contracts and which we continue to dollar cost average for Massachusetts and Rhode Island. In Rhode Island, we are preparing for the start of standard offer winter rates January 1st. And I'd like to hand it over now to Ed White, who will describe the ways that customers can mitigate their bills.
Yes, thank you, Margaret. I'm happy to be here this morning. I want to thank both Liz and Margaret for taking us through the complexities that that exist on the supply side. A lot of times in dealing with customers, a lot of hard work and hedging and all the strategy that goes into that goes completely unnoticed to the end customer. When we start to talk about the demand side or what individual customers can do at a micro level or at an individual level, the one answer that we always use is energy efficiency. And so I just want to highlight the fact that we've got programs for energy efficiency for customers both big and small, for industrial customers, commercial customers, small businesses, as well as residential customers. And so I encourage all of you that are listening to encourage your friends, your family, your colleagues to make sure that they take advantage of these energy efficiency programs that are ultimately all funded by customers. As we were going over the different pieces of the bill, one thing that should be highlighted, all of these energy efficiency programs are funded by our customers. So if you don't take advantage of the programs that you are essentially paying for, your neighbors are. So that would be the challenge that I would offer to have customers really look into what programs are best suited for their needs. Go about doing that, you may ask? Well, in Massachusetts, we were under Mass Save. All of the electric utilities and energy service providers provide efficiency programs across the state. So I'd encourage you to go on the Mass Save website or call their hotline. You can also get to them through our own website, National Grid's website, as well as through our call center. And same with Rhode Island. We have over $400 million of energy efficiency programs that are used over throughout the year to get customers to be as efficient as possible on the demand side. And we work with over 100 vendors to really employ all of the tradespeople that go out and do the replacements and make customers as efficient as possible. So there's a whole economic development cycle that goes into these programs in really helping customers best manage their energy needs. One with this, with a lot of the announcements and a lot of talk about the increased pricing, we've seen a lot of participation in our programs. And customers are calling up, trying to schedule residential audits. Right now we're running at about 4 to 6 weeks for those appointments to be fulfilled. And what we've been encouraging customers to do is matters into their own hands. Look for ways that they can conserve and save at their homes and at their businesses. And hopefully many of you have already started that process. Other things that you can do is through your local hardware store, Home Depot, Lowe's, etc., is go find LED lighting. LED lighting uses a fraction of energy compared to incandescent bulbs and CFL bulbs, and the lighting quality is much better. So I'd encourage you to do that. Look for our rebate programs on the residential side for the Nest thermostat. The Nest thermostat, I like to call it the iPhone of thermostats. And in addition to that thermostat, there's plenty of others out in the marketplace that may fit your needs even better. So definitely look for that. Look for Energy Star labels. All of these energy efficient tips and energy efficient programs are on our website. We have calculators to estimate savings and paybacks. Really encourage you, as well as your friends and family, to participate in the energy efficiency programs as best you can. Lastly, I just want to highlight how we work with the community. And through many of the communities that both Tim and Marcy referred to, we have community action programs. And they're local community action organizations that really help some of our customers that find these price fluctuations or these price swings the hardest to tolerate. Something as simple as budget billing is something that we would want to highlight with our customers to make sure that they're aware that they can take their total annual projected use divided by 12, and that may help smooth out some of the rougher spots during the peak of the summer or the peak of the winter. We also want to focus on things you can do yourself, as well as getting the experts into your homes and businesses through the Mass Save program or through the National Grid Energy Service programs. With that, I'm going to pause. I know throughout the presentations, received a number of questions. First question, I'm going to turn it over to Marcy Reed to answer first ones that came in.
Thank you, Ed, and thanks to the whole team for doing, I think, a really good job. And do encourage the questions to keep coming in so we can try to get to them. One of the questions was a really basic one: is the 37% increase on the supply or on distribution too? Actually, the way we calculate what a customer sees at the end of the day, the full bill. So 37% in Massachusetts represents the increase this winter over last winter's entire bill. Another question that came in was around the percent of industrial customers served by competitive suppliers. And in fact, it doesn't have to just be industrial customers. Any of our customers, residential, commercial, or industrial, can access the services of a competitive supplier. Currently in Massachusetts, about 61% of our industrial customers utilize a competitive supplier. That actually represents about 80% of our load to that group. Not slightly smaller in Rhode Island, but not too far different. So also asked about the procurement periods in Massachusetts. Why did we pick November and May? Actually, Margaret answered that during her section. Those are the stipulated times set by the DPU in Massachusetts for which we purchase power. Other utilities use different dates, but they're all mandated by the DPU. We also had another question about pipelines into the region, and what could the FERC do to have a say in this topic, since pipelines, as Liz mentioned, are regulated by the FERC. So I'm going to hand it over to Liz Arangio to answer that question.
So pipelines must file petitions, all their petitions with the FERC for approval. And FERC has a prescribed review process that it must follow when reviewing pipeline expansions. So all that will be taken into consideration when the FERC reviews any of the respective pipeline petitions filed for expansion to the Northeast.
This is Maria again. We had another question around the price of natural gas itself is not increasing. Then what is it that electricity rates are when electricity is generated by natural gas? And this is really the complex nature of what we're trying to talk about and what Liz and Margaret brought us through. Particularly what happens is supply demand, it's economics 101. So if an electric generator has difficulty accessing its raw product, which in this case is natural gas, and supply of it is low, yet demand for the product is high. Prices rise. So it is very complicated for our customers to understand why their natural gas bill might be flat or indeed reducing, while at the same time electricity prices are rising. Liz pointed out that we can store natural gas, so we buy it over the course of the year. We store it up and we sell it to our customers over the course of a cold winter. Electricity side, however, generators are not able to store electricity, as Margaret took us through. So on a very cold day, they may need to be supplementing their supply with expensive natural gas. It is extremely complicated, but that's basically the bottom line. The next question is go to Ed.
Yep, the next question came in and was asking about what is National Grid doing in the face of advancing increased amounts of PV and wind, or the solar and the wind programs. And I would say, you know, that kind of takes us to what we're doing to modernize our infrastructure. A lot of the reasons we do energy efficiency, a lot of the reasons that we talked today about supply and demand and making sure that we've got the right balance and the right mix is to accommodate those transformational activities that are going on in the marketplace. So one of the things that we're doing specifically in Massachusetts is we have a Smart Energy Solutions program. That's a program where we're testing state-of-the-art technology, ways of new devices out on the lines, new ways to communicate, to really give us much more visibility into how the grid operates and how the network operates. And we've been doing that for years, and we're going to continue to do that. But one of the things we've had to do is as all of this increased intermittent generation gets installed, we've had to continue to adapt our standards and our approaches to that infrastructure. So that's one of the exciting things that we've got going on here at National Grid. Not only are we installing sort of state-of-the-shelf technology, but we're also testing out some of the new state-of-the-art technology, working with some of our local universities and suppliers.
And I'd like to add on to Ed's comment there that for any of the legislators or staff on the phone, this is a great opportunity for the newsletters that you send out to your constituents to help us advertise energy efficiency and the use of it and the benefit that our customers can see, as well as access to programs such as our balanced billing program. Despite our efforts to speak from the tops of mountains on this topic, you know, you can't say enough. So anything you can do to help us get that message out is really appreciated. Another question about logistics of this call. People will be getting a recording of the presentation and the slides in shortly after this call, I think in the next couple of days, so that will be forthcoming.
And yes, we have another question here. Where do you see the market in 12, 24, and 36 months from now? So just looking at the wholesale market and, you know, the NYMEX, not that we would speculate on what pricing we see, but as a function of supply and demand, there are some proposals right now for expansion into the Northeast, expanded pipeline infrastructure. And that project, one of those projects will be expected to be in November of 2016. So as additional pipeline infrastructure comes to the region, we would anticipate seeing Citygate prices and constraints in the marketplace that have driven those prices up to lessen as we go forward.
Ms. Margaret, there was another question regarding, are there other choices on supply and would this save customers money? Yes, there are choices for customers. They do have to take basic service from the company. They can choose to go to a retail supplier to get that portion of their bill and to sign a contract with that supplier. With regards to saving money, it really depends on what the contract and the product that the retail supplier is offering. So I might offer longer term pricing than 6 months under basic service, or they might have shorter. So some will be able to make those sort of competitive offerings, but the important thing is that you can compare those offerings to our basic service rates, which are posted on our website, as well as information on how to choose a retail supplier and some links to the DPU's website regarding that.
Thank you. Another question came out asking if these new rates were actually approved. Apparently our website still says they're still proposed. They are 89% approved. The commodity piece has been approved. There's some other completely very small pieces within the bill that we're still working with the DPU on. But yes, these commodity prices have been approved. Thanks for the clarification.
Yep, I went through the list of questions. We just got one that's near and dear to my heart with regard to advertising or communications, and, you know, do we have links to social media and Facebook pages, et cetera? The answer to that is an overwhelming, resounding yes. I would encourage all of you to encourage your constituents to really check us out on Facebook, check us out on Twitter. That's another way to get a lot of the good information that we have with regard to energy prices, what you as a consumer can do with your energy use. There's a lot of tips and tricks that you can benefit from following us. I absolutely encourage you to do that, not only on the energy side, but also as we approach the winter time, the storm season. That's also a great way to get information as to how affected by inclement weather.
Just to clarify one other question on the Rhode Island rates. The electric will be effective January 1st. They're filed mid-November, and gas rates have been approved, and if they're not on the website, we will have them out there.
This is Margaret. There's another question that came in regarding if you stockpile natural gas and smooth out prices, can the electricity generators also buy and do the same thing to smooth out the cost of their supply? That the generators have no obligation to do that, whereas the gas distribution utility does, to have that firm transportation ready for that peak design day that Liz was describing. But in terms of generators, though some of them might have some contracts, most of them sign up for interruptible contracts, and they, because of the extreme pricing that happens on those so few days of the year, and if the weather actually occurs. That's why the generators choose not to lock up that transportation all year round. They just go into the spot market for those particular days to get their fuel.
Thank you, Margaret. Another question has come in about other utilities and when might they do similar increases. Both Star and you are on different calendars from us. I think the Unitil is coming up soon and dealing with the same market, and then also NU and Star will be following shortly after that. They have the same rules, they just have a different date. So yes, they will be coming up. A really good reminder from a good friend of ours who's listening in is that, you know, if you are dealing with customers who are low income or challenged in other ways in paying their bills, we have a lot of really good resources in the state, and I'm sure in Rhode Island as well, for CAP agencies, other agencies that deal with low-income customers, and others that any way we can get those out to these populations of folks is really appreciated. I know we do a lot ourselves, so again, maybe it's my plea to those of you on the phone who write newsletters and blogs. You know, it's great resources, all the CAP agencies. We're just looking through many questions, and again, thank you very much for these questions. Turn over to Liz now.
Yes, thank you. One question, you mentioned that additional pipeline infrastructure is anticipated to be in place by 2016 that may result in decrease in cost. What infrastructure is that? And that specifically is the Algonquin project. It is the AIM project, and that's anticipated to be in service in November 2016 and to provide an additional almost 342,000 decatherms to the region.
Okay, just scanning the board now to see what we might have.
I'm going to try this one.
Well, the question regarding would an energy auction benefit a customer? Does this give the customer transparency? Well, in terms of auction and competitiveness, the one thing I would stress is that basic service is procured competitively. The company does conduct less competitive solicitations, as do the other utilities under this construct. And with respect to that a customer has with the retail suppliers, there's several resources that, as you mentioned, that would give you the ability to compare pricing to make sure that you're looking at contracts side by side to make sure that the terms are similar. So that might help you in your benefit comparison as you're shopping for a retail supplier.
Okay.
You got one.
Looking to see if you have more questions.
Yeah, and before we close, I mean, this is Ed, and I know we did see some questions with regard to the phone quality, and if for those who had trouble hearing some of the presentation, I know we're going to make the slides available, but I would really encourage you to call our call centers and get in touch with folks at National Grid to answer any of your questions. You know, this is something that we're trying for the first time to really get out the message and get into some of the details about how the markets work and why costs are either going up or staying flat or why they're being adjusted. And so far, the feedback has been absolutely overwhelmingly positive. Not that the rate's going up, but that we're answering the questions. So to that end, by all means, please feel free to reach out to our call centers and get your questions answered.
And there was no question about the incremental pipeline capacity. Will it lower commodity prices? And is this the only answer to the volatility? So I'll answer this in terms of electric prices. I think gas line pipe capacity, as long as it would be incremental for the gas generators, that would have an impact to help bring down prices of electricity during these peaks during the cold weather. But as most solutions are, it's not the only piece of the solution. There would have to be other diversification that I had mentioned and some other means by which that the whole industry might be able to contain this winter solution.
This is Liz again. So just to elaborate a bit on what Margaret just said. So she made an important point that, you know, right now the Algonquin expansion project, the AIM project, has been signed up for on behalf of gas distribution companies. So that, as she said, that's correct, that we would be looking at that for use for our gas customers. So when you get pipeline infrastructure and expansion into New England, there was another related question, is that project separate from the proposed Kinder Morgan pipeline project? And yes, it is. So those are youth projects. Kinder Morgan has a project proposal as well to provide additional infrastructure, almost up to a BCF of additional infrastructure into New England. Algonquin also has another project proposal, the Atlantic Bridge and Access Northeast, two other proposals to bring more infrastructure to the region. So overall, those are separate and distinct projects, but right now the project that is slated for November 2016 is the AIM project itself.
And keep going with the topic of pipelines. There's a question that's coming around utilizing shale gas. If you could just talk about how the pipelines coming into the region access that gas supply.
Certainly. So these projects actually that I just mentioned, in particular the AIM project as well as the Kinder Morgan project, and quite a few other projects that actually bring gas, you know, to borders of the Northeast, are supply projects that are accessing the abundant shale gas in the Marcellus region. So there is an abundance of supply there, such that supply is very inexpensive, and simply it's almost the reverse of supply and demand. There's so much supply there, but the constraint is really the infrastructure to bring that supply to market. So all of these project proposals are intended to do just that, to bring the abundant shale gas to the Northeast on additional pipeline infrastructure.
The question regarding how long do bidders hold the price during solicitations? And I'm going to assume the question is regarding the full requirement service solicitations for basic service and standard offer. The answer to that is that it would only be a couple of hours. As the price comes in the morning, we have those solicitations up on the National Grid website. We evaluate the bids in, we evaluate them, and as soon as possible, as soon as we have the evaluation complete to determine which one is the best pricing, that contract's awarded to that wholesale supplier for full requirement service.
Okay, well, I think we're amazed and very happy at the number of questions that we've had. We're hitting up against the top of the hour, so we're going to push over to Heather in just a second here. We do want to say thank you to every single one of you who listened, who asked a question, and participated in the webinar. We'll hear from Heather that we do have a poll we'd like for you to complete, and we will utilize your feedback to make this even better next time we do it. So again, thanks on the behalf of the entire team here. We want to thank you for your participation, and Heather, it's over to you.
Thanks, Marcy. As she stated, there is a poll out there. We still have it going for a few more minutes, so please make sure to answer questions for us. And on behalf of National Grid, I would like to thank you all for attending our webinar today. As a reminder, the presentation materials and the playback link to the recording of today's webinar will be emailed to you sometime within the next couple of days. Thanks again for attending, and have a wonderful day.